Chattanooga awaits the naming of the next chief of police as Mayor Andy Burr considers 3 candidates given to him by a select committee. And as far as we know, he will be picking from one of those 3. He may, however, elect to reach beyond that group's work and say, here's someone else that you haven't mentioned. I would like to tap for the chief of police. The police department serves the executive branch. And when a murder is solved, the mayor should get credit for it. And when a citizen is abused, tased, beaten, shot, executed by an officer, the mayor should take credit for that as well, or take the blame for it, depending on how you want to see such action. This is David Tulis, and we're looking today at a gloomy scenario with a bright picture and one bright gleam in the haze to mention also today on the David Tulis program. I do thank you for joining me today here, for giving me a couple minutes of your time at Nooga Radio. There's a story in the Wall Street Journal about why people don't move. There's less interstate moving of people, less relocation of people in a long-term trend. People are not moving. And it has a dateline of West Branch, Michigan, and it deals with common people there who don't feel really rich enough, and yet there are inducements for them not to move to Grand Rapids, a much larger place. And it's interesting how the free market analysis shows itself in the quotes and in some of the observations made by the 2 reporters at the Wall Street Journal. One is that if you move to a larger city, you're going to pay much higher rents. And that's one reason for that is zoning, the fact that there's zoning that improves the city, right? Zoning is a way for the well-to-do to improve their city. The effect is, though, that poor people can't live in the city. They have to live further out. Zoning creates sprawl. Zoning creates higher prices, higher retail, the need for developers to have a higher return on their investment in the city, and so they build upper scale commercial places and houses, and so invite only the rich to buy. And there's less and less, fewer and fewer amenities for the poor, who have don't have a lot of money and who need to have cheap places to live. Maybe not well kept, but that's the trade-off you make. If you don't have a lot of money, you have a remote landlord and toilets that don't always work, and long delays in getting the repairman or the carpenter to come in and fix something. That's just a trade-off that you make. Another inducement for people to not move out of rural areas and stay in impoverished, dying towns is that there is licensing of many occupations today. It used to be in the 1890s, no occupation was licensed, but with the progressive era, we can thank Democrats and Republicans for bringing it to its final fruits. We have more and more occupations that are not free and harmless and easily entered into by a would-be practitioner, but they are owned by the state. And so the person who wants to go into a trade, chiropractic or dentistry or law has to get the state's permission to enter into it and obtain a license. And a fourth of the workers in the country are under license to hold their jobs, and that's up 5 times 500% from the 1950s. Now, and so the problem with moving is if you move to another state, maybe move to another county, you have a licensing problem. So you're sort of stuck to avoid bureaucracy and delays and expense dealing with a license. You have to stay where you are, and so you're making yourself content in a lesser situation, and you're a picture of the stagnation really across the country. And then there's also another reason people don't pick up and move is that there are government programs that make many things free. And if you move, well, then that freedom, you might say, that subsidy is disruptive. So free government programs for this and that are a disincentive for relocation. Relocation already has risks. There are unknowns to move to the bigger city where there might be more opportunity, but you don't really want to give up the easy street you have with the government subsidy, state or federal One man who runs a community college says people are stuck in one big rut, and that is because of government programs. And there's also this, and this touches on our argument here at the David Tulis program about local economy and localism and the need for relational economics, the need for community economics as opposed to just dollar-driven pragmatic economics, right? That's what we all do. We're all pragmatists, and we all let the dollar control. If it's cheaper here, we'll buy it here, even though the man from whom we've always done our business, or with whom we've always done our business, is our guy. He's our guy, and suddenly a cheaper price at another distributor or another middleman draws us away, and we forsake that relationship. And there's something understandable about why we do that, but it's not very humane and it's not very relational, and we may not be getting a better deal. We may save. I was at a car dealership yesterday on a sales call. I talked with a salesman a bit about his career and where he came from. He was in the food services business, and he said that people are being pushed out of that field because many customers in business and private customers do things online. And there's less personal selling and personal relationship in that field. It's all just done on the screen, and the controlling piece of data is the dollar amount. And he says, well, some people could maybe get a can of vegetables wholesale cheaper over here, but they could buy from me, and in the end they may not be satisfied because they haven't done business with me because I care for them. I'm their scout, if you will, as their middleman, as their salesman. I'm their scout in this field, and I'm always looking out for their advantage, my own advantage, of course, but also for their advantage because I want to keep that business. I want to keep that business coming to me, and so I have to be agile and mobile and current in my field. And yet sometimes customers they discount the human relationship and the value that brings in commerce, and they go just for the dollar amount, and then they end up being dissatisfied, and they're crying out in the end for someone to help them. And that happens to have been, in this case, perhaps the man with whom I was chatting about his career. He's in car sales now, but he was in the food business before. There's a loss of trust in other people, according to the Wall Street Journal. People, and in this part of the story, focused on a young woman who's Christian, and she was unhappy with the queer agenda. She was unhappy with immigrants, people speaking strange languages, whom she would encounter possibly in the big city, and feeling tension about conflict with moral codes, people who have different, looser lifestyles than she, by God's grace, was trained to have, and so she was not sort of in part of that picture of stagnation, not willing to move and to have new experiences, new people, on account of moral conflicts among others. But I think perhaps the main reason that I noted in this article is zoning, how zoning keeps prices high. And the story said that it's if you're an attorney and you're living in Alabama or Mississippi and you're moving to the Big Apple, you'll spend 21% on housing. But if you're a janitor moving to New York City in that field, well, your expenses for housing are going to go to 51% or 52%. Clearly untenable, and so you're not going to go to the big city. You will remain in your small town, in your rural area, and that is, that's part of the story that we're telling here on the David Tulis program, local economy and the free market. If we have a free market, if you have a zoning-free, occupational licensing-free state, an economy where there are not cartels, because zoning is a cartel, licensing is a cartel, it's a state cartel. States, the federal government has the Security and Exchange Commission going after trust, right? Trusts are cartels where people collude, as they say, agree on pricing to fix and set prices of particular goods or services, and the feds go after them with civil complaints because trusts are not allowed. Well, the government itself is the biggest trust, and it is an anti-competitive, anti-market operation in every point. Whenever the government says, we own this area, we own this good, we own this service, we own, as it does now, medical insurance, well, guess what's going to happen? You have government, the more government ownership you have of anything, the less liberty you have, and you have higher prices, you have less availability, and you have effectively a dehumanization of the market because the human interest is squeezed out. And I think that is a very sad thing. There is the people in this story are suffering what's something I think that will be amplified in the future, and that is the sense of risk avoidance, having the need in their minds to avoid risk, avoid new things, avoid chance, to maintain what you've got. Now, there's an interesting analysis by Charles Hugh Smith, one of my favorite writers, about some of the reasons why there's this increasing interest in risk avoidance, and what he puts in the phrase, "We can't take that chance." Have you heard that before? We can't take that chance. That is a mantra that is gaining credibility in the economy today. There are many things that are inducements to avoid risk. One of them is easy credit. If you have easy credit, you don't have an incentive to take risks. He suggests. He says we see this pervasive avoidance of risk in other areas as well. For example, in what college students are choosing as majors, and what policymakers at the highest levels are saying. In a word, we can't take that chance. In the economy, as it is, they run by the government. The main risk that no one can take, the main peril we must avoid, is letting the price of interest rise to its natural level. And what will happen then, as it goes up, and we have these tender steps by Grandma Yellen to let the price go up a quarter of a point here, and months later a quarter of a point again, but not taking a chance on the market setting that value. You have maintenance of the dead wood and the driftwood in the marketplace. You can't afford a fire that burns off some of that dead wood, because the whole thing may go up in flames, and that's the fear. And of course, it's a legitimate fear because and we've been a decade of easy money where the real value, the real price of future discount is suppressed. So we don't know how to discount anything, and everybody, because money is generally cheap, everybody, even the retail people like you and me, we are all confident of the future, right? We are heavily in debt, and we can pay off our future obligations with our current cash flow. This clearing of dead wood then sets the stage for a healthy expansion of credit and business. So Smith says, if we have a real marketplace price for credit, then we can have these fires that will burn off many businesses and many fields. They'll just go bankrupt. Okay, that's what that means. People will go bankrupt. Yes, they will go bankrupt. They will lose their jobs, as we're hearing from Dave Flessner in today's Times Free Press. The company U.S. Express is laying off 100 workers in Chattanooga and at a depot in Tunnel Hill. Dan O'Bailey is quoted as saying, "We simply needed to make sure our resources and people match our strategic direction. We do not have any plans to cut any lines of business." Of course, that's PR speak. It doesn't really say anything, but it sounds like you're getting some insight into what's happening. But in the end, they're overstaffed at that company, and drivers are not being cut back. In fact, it's hard to get drivers, but background people, support staff, they're being cut. Smith says, in other words, if we're confident we can handle the downside of a risk not paying off, then we're able to accept some risks as the necessary means of reaping major gains. If no one takes risk, then there's no prospect of gains. In other words, there's reduced chance of prosperity in the American economy as fewer and fewer people are willing to take risks. He says, if our faith in the future and our resilience is near zero, then we can't take any chances. We are restricted to taking only the safest path, even if it means foregoing all the really big gains that are reserved for those willing to accept some risk. Now, the Jump Fund, the Women Entrepreneur Booster here in Chattanooga, working on its second round of capital, about $3 million for women-run businesses. It's looking for people who are willing to take a chance, right? And prosperity comes when you take a risk. When you put money up to risk, you put your time up for risk. There's an opportunity cost for starting a business. And this is David Tulis, and we have a call. The number is 800-8949. This is David Tulis, and calling you live on the air. What's on your mind?
Great topic, Dave. Mike. I want to throw a couple of thoughts out there. First of all, why would people want to take a risk when the Federal Reserve controls the units of purchasing power, and the government can, just with the stroke of a pen, request that the Fed increase the debt, and then all of a sudden the stock market can crash and everybody can lose everything they have with their 401k. And I mean, people are risk averse because they're not in control of their money. And when a nation loses control of their money, they're slaves to the banks. Our founders told us that. We will wake up slaves of the banks. We have to take control of that. The other issue is, and I've met so many foreigners over the past year, from Volkswagen, TVA, and whatever, what is going on with the stupidity of Americans that they're not smart enough to run this machinery, that they have to import people from Poland, Czechoslovakia, Germany, because Americans are not smart enough for the technology. We need to import 2.1 million people a year because Americans have been dumbed down. I don't know why they haven't picked up pitchforks and stormed the schools and the institutions. They're not being prepared for the real world. They're being brainwashed about, let's take down statues. It's slavery's the problem. You know, it's the white privilege. And this is all crap. We need to prepare our children for the future. We need to abolish it. We're not going to abolish the Federal Reserve, abolish legal tender laws, and people need to control their substance, their government, and their lives. That's the problem. Until that happens, you know what we are? We're a bunch of kids living in mommy and daddy's house. And the house is the federal government. We're living in their house. They're our mommies and daddies. And they dictate everything to the American people. Until the American people say, I'm moving out, and I'm taking control of my destiny, David, it's only going to get worse.
Well, that's why the fact when things are free, Mike, people become risk averse. Think in the school sector. There's a story by David Carroll about an interview, a very nice interview he has with Brian Johnson, Dr. Brian Johnson, the new superintendent. And there, if you read that story, and thanks Mike for the call. If you read that story, you can see this whole risk aversion. Because the public school is free, we can't leave it. And this is a very nice interview that Brian Johnson gives with David Carroll. But it's willing to accept the way things are. It's willing to say we can't take that chance of being on our own. We can't take that chance of having a free market education because there'll be disturbance. We'll have to be making decisions. We may have some costs. Yes, we'll have a property tax bill that's cut in half. My property tax bill on a house in Saudi Daisy would be not $1,200, but $600 if we didn't have the public school. And suddenly I have to make decisions with that money on my children. And just briefly about this interview, I wanted to give you a sense of do read it or do listen to it. But it's an appeal. It's an appeal to stay with us. Don't change things. Don't do anything different. Don't dare think you can do it on your own. We're here, and even though our system is broken, even though our system is shot, I'm here to help you. Okay, I'm here to make it better. And the appeal of interviews like this is always to put a face on an administration, to put a face on a bureaucracy, to personalize, humanize, and localize an alien spaceship, if you will. Public schools are a kind of alien ship that have landed here, and their little pods have grown up in neighborhoods, and people think not that they're strange and bizarre craft, but they are our schools. This is our local high school. This is our neighborhood grade school. And he says, for example, opportunity. He favors opportunity that exists at those schools. He says, I think it's a great opportunity. We're in the right position to capitalize on a lot of things and support from so many in the community. When you look at the workforce, that's who it'll be, these 44,000 students. And here he's saying, because so many people are in this system already, it can't be wrong. And there are opportunities with all these people because they're there and they're human beings and they're in the system and you're in the system. So what's the problem? He's sort of begging the question. Why would you be upset? Why would you think that this system is broken and is a disservice to you? Because everybody else is in it too. The public school system relies on the human element of people such as Brian Johnson, the superintendent, who's challenging the media, right? He's challenging the community. He's saying, let's quit talking about these schools like they're the worst things in the world. We know what the achievement data says, and so on. You're not supposed to think of this as an alien threat to yourself and your family and your prosperity and that of our county. No, rather, you are to see your future in terms of the risk-averse system. We can't take that chance, as it were. We can't take that chance and have make our own decisions in school, and we have to rely on these good people. And you know, our grade school near us isn't that bad. We're you know, it's run by people we know. We know the teacher. We've met the teacher, and so what's happening is this alien state structure is using the things that you value the most. You, my listener, that would be local economy, the free market, and the human face of a genuine personal marketplace, personal economics, is using those things for its own benefit. And may I suggest, maybe for your detriment. Why are you still in the public school system? You, my listener.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.